Keep your hands and head inside the vehicle at all times. Buckle your seatbelts, check your mirrors, sit on back and relax. It's lights out and away we go for the Tall and Short of It podcast. All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast, coming to you live from the Team Rocket Secret Lair. I'm your host, Justin.
And I'm James. Oh, wait. Never mind. I'm Aaron. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen.
Nice.
Good to see you, Justin. We've got a good episode ahead. We had a few F1 livery launches and car launches. We've got our Formula One team review, good bit of League of Legends, and then, of course, some Magic the Gathering to round it out. How have you been?
Yeah, I've been all right. Had a pretty good weekend, pretty out of the ordinary recently weekend. So I'll be excited to talk about that. Good to see you too, my friend. How have you been this week?
I've been pretty good. It was a nice weekend. The week so far has been pretty good. You also got a fresh haircut over the weekend, I see, if I'm correct.
Yes, sir. And if by got you mean did it to myself, yes, sir. I just get to trim up the edges and have Sarah clean up the back.
Yeah, I do. Same deal here. So
hell yeah.
So yeah, but a good week overall. I'll not keep everyone waiting too long and get into my Rose, Thorn, and Seed for the week. So for my Rose this week, with having a pretty good weekend, I had a bunch of college friends come into town. We did our kind of belated Secret Santa Christmas exchange. Went to this really cool Lebanese restaurant in Philadelphia and had some amazing food that I'll talk about a bit later. So yeah, overall a nice weekend. Good to see some people that I hadn't in a little bit. So
nice.
For my thorn this week, it is pretty frustrating. This has happened to me before, but I think it was on Friday morning. I woke up, got out of bed, got showered, getting my day going, feel great, ready to take on the world. I put on my work outfit and all of a sudden I just have this crazy pain in the top of my back. And so I'm pretty sure that I pinched a nerve or something. It's still a lingering issue. I've been I've tried rolling it out some. I've been using some topical muscle stuff, icy hot type things to try and kind of work it out, and it has gradually gotten better. But when it happened, I was like, this is just when it's happened previously, I basically am like, oh, this is my life for the next 10 or so days, and then all of a sudden it'll be gone and I'll be perfectly fine again. But I'm still in the thick of it, and it is pretty uncomfortable. So not the ideal way to spend day-to-day life. I understand why people go to you to kind of get these issues worked out. It makes a lot of sense. I've definitely considered it myself, but haven't had the time really to even look into doing that. So
well, at least you know some good home care strategies. That's really important as well. But yeah, support your local massage therapist if you ever get a pinched nerve. I'm sorry to hear that you're dealing with that, though. I know, especially being someone that does a lot of data entry, that can be, I imagine, pretty uncomfortable throughout the day.
Yeah, sitting at a computer, I was fortunate enough to not have to do too much of the physical things that I sometimes do at work with moving furniture and things like that. So I haven't had to do as much of that since it happened. But yeah, just not too fun, and it kind of makes just everything a little worse throughout the day because it's just that nagging pain. It doesn't really ever go away. I kind of lose track of it periodically, but then I just have to move slightly, and I'm like, oh, there it is. So hopefully by next episode I'll have hit my my 10-day mark, which is about the time frame I'm expecting this to go on for. and it will be gone before next episode. But I guess I'll just have to wait and see. Keep stretching, working it, doing what I can. So then for my seed this week, just with work, things with my coworker who I was having some issues with and that we were having some issues with have gotten a good bit better. One of our kind of regional people had a chat with them and kind of laid things out and was like, this is the way it is. It's not like no one's trying to make you look bad, put you in your place, do any of these things. Everyone's just trying to be a team. And since then, it has been like a 180 on the attitude with them, and I'm hoping it is a kind of permanent adjustment. So that's kind of the wait and see part of it. But thus far, it's been a nice improvement, along with some of my rentals and things like that are picking up a little bit over the past couple weeks. Unfortunately, for the folks that I've had to house because of some like insurance things like fires, floods, whatnot. So happy to kind of have things getting back to a little more normal, because then my bosses are kind of off my back a little bit, and I get to help out some new people who need a place to stay. So yeah, it's work and things like that are looking up, kind of going in the right direction there. So
hell yeah, that's what we like to hear. Yeah, it's nice when you're able to just kind of like reformat an interaction and get, you know, the other party to understand, like, oh no, it's not this, it's that. Oh, all right.
yeah,
And almost just like a, you know, just like a thorn out of a lion's paw, the attitude can change immediately. So that's sweet.
yeah. And I mean, I've definitely changed the way I had been interacting. I'm doing more communicating like through my boss to this person to kind of avoid putting my foot in my mouth or kind of overstepping the boundaries as they're seen. And so I'm just kind of doing my best to do my part to make it like an easier process, and it seems like that's being reciprocated, which
Nice.
which I'm glad. I don't like having to tiptoe around anyone. In general, it's uncomfortable to constantly be on edge, like, oh, what if I say the wrong thing? This person's gonna, like, it's gonna upset them or whatever. So just glad to kind of have that with some positive progress there. So
Yeah, nice. I'm happy to hear it.
yeah, but that's been my past week. What have you had going on over that way for your week?
Couple of pretty cool things I have to say. I'll start with my seed. So I'll just start with my thorn because it's just dumb. I'll get it out of the way. So I walked out the door the other day, and like usually this time of year, like in my mind, it should be like the depths of freezing cold when I walk outside, and it's just like really not. And that just put my mind on this whole tear of like, it's funny because in my head I'm like, oh, like it's like warm out, like it's not that bad. Oh, it's like kind of a nice day, it's enjoyable. But then, you know, you expand that thinking a little further, and then I was like, oh fuck, like there's probably farmers that are like, this is not good, this is not good, like what, something's good, you know, whatever. And then I was like, oh man, but then that means, and then I started thinking about Al Gore, and then I was like, fuck man, Al Gore was right, dude. And then I was like, oh man, it's all over for me, it is all over for me. So
Wow.
my thorn, yeah, was this like existential crisis of like this warm-ish day turned into, oh man, it's not supposed to be this warm. I felt like like a fish out of water.
No, I mean, that's exactly. I saw a bee the other day, just flying around. I should not be seeing bees in like early February. It's crazy. And I mean, I definitely I have those kinds of thoughts, but I don't let them, like, I don't let my thoughts run away too far usually. So it kind of limits to, oh man, the weather's not supposed to be like this. Oh no, global warming. Oh no, we're all gonna die and the earth's gonna burn. And that's about where mine stops. But it's a much smaller, or like maybe quicker progression from start to finish.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, I think it's just getting a little too warm out, but I'm glad you feel it just as much as I have. But yeah, so that was just a funny little thorn here for the week. My Rose on Saturday, we went to a pool hall that I think like just kind of recently opened up. It's a billiard place down in New Holland. I forget the name of it, but it was a pretty cool place. Had a lot of tables, a lot of really nice tables. They had like a tournament going on there, so it was like pretty lively. It seemed like a bunch of people really knew each other. I imagine it was like an already established, probably like group of players that used to frequent like somewhere else close by that had just kind of like it seemed like they had all known each other for longer than like the place was open.
Gotcha.
Whatever, none of my business, doesn't care. So, but the funny thing is, like, when we walked in, there was just like a gang of people just like sitting at the front desk in this way of like, where are we supposed to go? There's people shooting right here. So the polite thing to do is just wait, right? And like I saw where we had to go, like I knew, but there were people like literally shooting like literally right in front of us. I was like, I'm just gonna wait until this guy's like done his like little play, whatever he's doing. It would have taken another 15 seconds maybe, but there were a couple people looking, and then one lady was like, oh, you could go check in right over there. I was like, all right, great, thanks. And I just stood and just wanted to watch this guy. And then the owner comes over and he's like, hey, new here, first time, whatever, super friendly. It was just all very like, yeah, like I'll get there, you know what I mean? But it was dope. Showed us to the table, and we just played and played for like 3 hours. Nice. And it was so nice to do that where you don't have to like put quarters in constantly. Nobody's putting quarters on the table like, yo, who got next? It's like none of that. It's really nice to just kind of be able to rack them up and do whatever you want. So that was really sweet on Sunday, and just like being able to take my sticks out and play again. Like it's been since the before 4, you know, when I've been able to play. So it was really fun to get out there.
Nice. That's awesome. So just you and Sarah going down and playing, or?
Yeah, it was great.
That's cool. And that's funny with the, like, you'd think with a like kind of like pool hall with that, the ownership and like the hosts or whatever would be a little more in tune of like, yeah, you're just like being respectful of the person playing, like not trying to be like, oh here, let me squeeze behind you while you're pulling your like arm back and lining up your shot. Like you would think that they'd have a little awareness of that, I guess, but yeah, that sounds like a pretty cool spot nonetheless.
Yeah, it was pretty dope. And like after like first moment jitters, like that just little interaction, the rest of it was great. Like you're just left to your own devices. You can spread out. They have TVs. My man had like an Xbox on the wall. He's like, yo, like if you want us to turn this on, let me know. Like the spot seemed dope. People had like coolers of beer that they brought in. Pizza was getting delivered.
So this isn't like a bar at all?
No.
It's just like...
No, it's BYOB. It is strictly a pool hall.
Oh,
all it is
I was imagining it was like a like kind of like an arcade bar, but that it was like mostly pool. Like it was just like their main thing is like pool tables. Like they have like 10 pool tables or something like that, and just
likely more than that. They have like small concessions behind the stand, but the whole thing is just set up for like maximizing pool play. It's sweet. Bunch of different areas.
I don't know if I've ever seen a like place with a pool table other than someone's home that wasn't a bar. I really don't think I have. Like even places like up here where they have a lot of pool tables, it's like Buffalo Billiards. It's a big ass bar with like a bunch of pool tables up at State College.
Okay, gotcha.
Like the big places to play pool were bars. There were no like just random spots to go and shoot pool without having drinks right there. So that caught me off guard when you said bring in coolers. I was like, wait, what bar lets people bring in coolers?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm curious if it's something about the who knows why. Maybe they're planning to in the future or something similar, but at the moment that was the setup. But yeah, it seemed like just pretty free and open and just like really catering to the players there.
Nice.
Like the next time I think I'll be very comfortable to be like, oh yeah, like can we like get the, can you turn the TV on? Like I'm trying to put something up on the TV and just like really spread out and hang out. So yeah, it was just really cool.
Nice.
And then my seed here for the week. So I've broken down some very specific financial goals that I've had in relation to Magic, where as I've told you before, my view has like very much like narrowed in on just like a few things. So one of those goals was to complete the set of fetch lands. So the fetch lands are the pay a life, search for like a forest or an island. So you can go get like your breeding pool or your triomes or the lands that can enter untapped. Very strong. So I had a couple from early collecting that I had picked up, the like world championship version. So they have the gold border. They're like much cheaper. Slowly was able to like pick up a couple here and there. Modern Horizons 2 gets released. Fetchlands crash all of a sudden. Now I have like 6 out of the 10. And now I'm like, okay, well, it's pretty reasonable now to be able to like complete that set. The other 2 that I didn't have from Modern Horizons, they're going to be really cheap. Knock those out at Christmas. So now there's only 2 left. I'm like, all right, great. Had a couple of very gracious clients, made a couple of pretty good tips. So it's like, okay, great. Last week, me and Sarah went to the card store locally, and I was like, okay, so I have a list of priorities, but the top thing at that list of priorities is a Bloodstained Mire. If they have one, I'm getting it, and then cashing out, we're out of here. And walk up to the counter, and just right there, the original printing, the Onslaught printing, fucking beautiful condition. I was like, great. Well, I guess we can leave. So I was like, I would like that, sir. I flipped through a couple of the other stacks. I was like, yeah, we're good to go. And then I talked to John, get the Polluted Delta from him, trade up, give him a couple cards. He gives me the Polluted Delta. Everybody's happy. So now my Fetchland collection is complete, and now my goals are even like, I'm cleaned up, baby. There's
Nice.
there's only the view has gotten even narrower, and when that day comes, I'm gonna be super happy to talk about it. But now I'm just like I'm saving up for like a very specific thing now. I think it's gonna the accessory collecting, I think, is going to slow down big time, and I'm just setting my eyes on that. But it's nice to check a big box off. So a seed kind of complete here in that sense. So yeah, that's my Rose Thorn seed here for the week.
Well, that is pretty cool. I'm glad you got to complete that, because that's like I know that you've limited a lot of your card purchases, like you said, and so kind of being able to have these like more attainable goals, as opposed to being like, oh, I want to buy the next box and like weed through that in hopes of the best, is definitely solid. So very, very cool. I'm curious when you'll get your Death Lotus and all with your saving up.
That may be a little far away, but I will let you know when my Death Lotus comes in.
Yeah, so that's the right card, right?
It's the right card.
Okay, I thought so. Or the right card that I'm thinking of, so.
You got it.
I just wanted to make sure my name wasn't off. It's been a minute. But to move along into the meat of the episode, just some quick hits that we've got here. Red Bull, of course, had their car launch. They are partnering with Ford, so big news for Formula One. I know it was rumored, but officially came out with their launch. So starting in 2026, they will be working with Ford there. The car itself, very similar to last year's car in terms of the livery and everything. Of course, the new ad sponsor placements and all, but otherwise nothing too crazy from Red Bull in terms of their new livery and car.
Yeah, and of course, it's just like your version, like, 2023.1. I imagine it's going to change a lot from that day to when we see it in, where are they testing at, Bahrain?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it'll likely change till then. But yeah, it's cool to see the unveil. It's fun to see them spend a whole hour on just like pulling a sheet over a car and like, ta-da, here it is. And like it's not even started, so there's no like engine roar or anything. It's just a meh.
Yep.
There's a car. Great.
There it
But
is.
you enjoy the show. I think the Ford partnership is pretty dope. I imagine if like it'll bring at least some what would you say, like American ear association
Kinda
to
like,
the sport.
yeah, it piques some curiosity from some American racing fans, I think.
Right.
So,
Yeah, like, well, Ford's getting involved.
yeah, like, oh, Ford, let me check this out. So, and I'm sure people who are involved in racing or who are interested in watching racing, whether it's NASCAR, IndyCar, anything like that, are gonna most likely have some ears to the pavement in terms of the like other motorsports, kind of like we do. So a very cool thing, and yeah, a very long launch up until actually revealing the car. They were making sure they got their money's worth from anyone that they had on stage there, to be like, all right, like, we're paying you for an hour, so you're gonna be here for an hour. But yeah, I think the car looks good. It looks the same. It looks like a F1 car. I don't really know if there's too much else to say about that. But on the flip side of the coin, Williams had their car launch and immediately unveil the car. No wait for everyone. No other people going on. It was a lot of people were kind of comparing it with Red Bulls, who also had all these like different things for other like extreme sports that they are sponsors of, whether that's like skiing or skydiving or whatever else. So they go through, release the car. I like it. It looks pretty similar to what we saw last year with Williams, but of course a couple of notes with the golf partnership being announced for them and having that sponsorship on the side of the rear wing, the Duracell sponsorship, which was pretty cool, being the a battery for that like engine intake, whatever that's called. So a pretty solid looking car from Williams.
Yeah, I agree. And the photo that I'm looking at, it obviously like the lighting from the soundstage that it's on very much complements the blue coloring. Yeah, I think it looks really good aesthetically. The compared to the Alfa Romeo car that we saw as well. And it just looks like this from the photo is the side pod openings are very narrow. Alternatively, Alfa Romeo has like a very large opening going into this year. So just like one minor design difference that we're noting. But yeah, I think overall the cars that we've seen just have looked pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a
This one
fan.
included.
They look sharp. I'm excited to see what changes kind of take place from now until the testing. The Alfa Romeo car, like you said, they launched, and I love the livery. I think it looks really, really good. Probably my favorite livery so far with these releases. But some interesting design things with their car as well. The front wing has an interesting kind of shape, along with down the sides of the floor. They have all these little like ridged, isolated, I don't even know what you would call it, like mini wings almost on the side. And
like
so
little winglets.
Yeah, and so I'm curious because from what I saw, this is very similar to what Alfa Romeo's like car. Like there was basically said that this car is essentially what their car will look like going into the season.
Gotcha.
That of course may change plenty, but it's very interesting because if they are going with something like that to create better downforce, or to maybe allow them to turn better while still maintaining downforce and things like that with the floor. I'm very interested to see what happens if someone goes into the side of the car and breaks off a bunch of those little winglets, like you called them off, because it seems like a pretty fragile component to be that out in the open, I guess. But overall, still a really cool car, and I'm just very curious about some of the design aspects like that. I want to see what the reasoning behind that is as we get a little closer or further into the season. I'm sure we'll see some tech updates and things like that from Formula One about the car. So
yeah, for sure. Thinking about what you said about the small carbon fiber elements, I imagine if cars come together, broken pieces are broken pieces, and it's going to cost them some amount of money anyway. Whether or not the piece is like a large body part or like a tiny little aerodynamic element, I'm curious what the difference would be, but I imagine just coming together is unfortunate no matter what piece is breaking, but
Right.
and they'll think of the downforce gains before they think of like what's the cost of this if it breaks.
Oh, and not even so much about the cost, but more like how will the car handle if that is like a pretty significant component to that, and to the drivability. I'm curious, like, if you like, sides of cars get tapped all the time, especially at the start of races. If you're having 3 out of those 9 little like things breaking off, and all of a sudden you have a lopsided arrow on the car, as opposed to they kind of bump into the side, but like not little bits flying off or anything, just little scuffs kind of on the side of the car or something. It seems like it might be easier to break and make a decently significant difference. So I really am curious to see, because this is the only car thus far that I've really seen anything that I'm like, oh, I wonder how that's gonna work, or oh, that seems like an interesting design choice. It sounds like a lot of the things that the cars have done differently, because the floor is used so much for that downforce now, is not visible to someone unless you're kind of up under the car. So you just kind of see the outside, and if that hasn't changed, it's tough to tell the difference. So
well, yeah, you're right. Compared to the other ones, it does. That is quite a drastic design difference. So yeah, you're right. We'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, and so just some other news with the releases and everything. There were, of course, some interviews conducted with some of the teams. A big thing that I saw coming from Williams, which I found pretty interesting, was that the deal between them and Gulf, it's not a huge sponsorship. It's not. It's probably less than $4 million from what I saw, but it's interesting because it seems like from this report, Williams is lacking a bit of sponsorship and everything. They are only going to be receiving, like it says, an estimated total of 16 million that they got from sponsors last year, and a lot of that money was linked to Latifi being a driver. So whether or not those partnerships that they had previously will continue, it sounds like they've got some financial things to figure out to hopefully avoid just having financial difficulties, and hopefully being able to kind of keep improving on the same types of levels that like Haas, I expect to kind of improve this year with being up to that budget cap with their spending.
Yeah, because you would hope that the excuse me. You would hope that the gains that were made in the team can attract sponsorship money that doesn't have to come from the drivers. So do the roster moves that they make and the development on the car translate into like being a more attractive team to want to support and be a part of? Hopefully that's the case, because that's a lot of money to be like walking out the door like that. So hopefully they're able to make it up in some other way, really.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Logan Sargent bring in some sponsorships as well if he has a pretty good looking year, especially. But it's definitely something I want to keep my eye on with some other interviews. So the FIA announced a new rule that essentially bans drivers and I guess team members from making political statements and all. And so Max kind of vocalized how he feels that it is kind of unfair and unnecessary to do that. He thinks, I mean, and just like with any professional athlete, anyone with a platform, like if you have a platform and you're going to use it to kind of project your ideas to an audience and everything, like that should be allowed. I can go spew whatever opinions and everything I have on the internet, and that's perfectly fine. So, like, just because someone else is another human being, but they are more famous than me, they shouldn't be allowed to, like, express their opinion because it goes to more people. Like, I think it's a weird way to kind of... I think it's a ban is kind of weird. I think it should be more of like, hey, if there are things going on in the world, please just be cautious about what you say, because it does reflect back on us. If you have anything that you are like unsure or like want to kind of run past us, like, sure. But an outright ban is just a little kind of crazy to me.
Yeah, I agree. An outright ban seems silly. I would understand some kind of limiting on, like, particularly like F1 broadcasts or something similar. Nor does it seem like any driver has overstepped any bounds, and like not even to say one side of the fence or the other, that doesn't matter. It's any words spoken towards let's say a people or a movement or an idea have always been pretty civil and understanding, and like what seemed to be good and measured intention, if that makes sense. So like, yeah, it doesn't feel like it's in response to any drivers being like very extreme with some kind of opinion that would reflect badly on the FIA. It seems like preventative in a way that is kind of like, I would argue, in bad taste. It's like, you probably don't want to be trying to censor your drivers. If you want to
Right.
limit what they're saying, like on the international broadcast, if you don't want them like bigging up this and shitting on that, like yeah, fair enough, that's fine. Like that's like within your own right, but just telling them to like don't be vocal about the things you believe just because you're a driver in any in any arena of your life, that seems really silly and just like kind of out of their control.
Yeah, and I mean, like, the other part of it is like how broad is political statements? Is Seb
Right.
Vettel and his like different helmets that brought awareness to different environmental issues, is that a political statement? A lot
They
of
would
people would
probably
say it
argue,
is.
yeah.
Lewis
Yeah.
Hamilton, like being a black man and like supporting Black Lives Matter and kneeling in response to some of the things that have happened, particularly in the U.S. over the past few years, and
Hmm.
trying like doing the end racism whole kind of campaign with Formula One. Like that's clearly a political statement. Like what are they trying to limit? Are they only trying to limit like things with new like international like issues or something like that? Or like I mean, they've made their fair share from F1 of political statements by going out and banning Russian drivers because of the war
Hmm.
with between Russia and Ukraine. Like it's just it doesn't make a lot of sense, and I think it's not the right way to handle it, because I think the drivers all have their own personalities, their passions, their beliefs and everything, and that's like kind of what endears you to these people a bit. It's not just that they're robot racing drivers that are out there grinding day in and day out. Like I follow Lewis on Instagram. I follow Max on Instagram. I follow Charles, and whether it's Lewis traveling to some obscure part of the world, or Max sitting in a simulator, or Charles out at some bougie restaurant dressed like a GQ model, like it's cool to see these drivers like be themselves, and I don't like the idea of limiting that, because that like attracts people to be fans.
Yeah, it can. I can see the other side of the argument. I'm not saying I agree with it. I can see the other side of the argument from like the organization's perspective, where if they are too vocal about, let's say, some just like widely agreed upon egregious topic, then you may attract like the wrong kind of fans. I agree. I think so far we've been in an environment where nobody's really like taking advantage of the position, I would say, but maybe it's just an attempt to hopefully curb it in the future. While I disagree, it's, you know, whatever, fair enough. It's just a company trying to cover their butt when they know they have like internationally popular humans,
Yeah,
20 of
well,
them at their disposal.
I mean, have some. I'm sure they do to some extent have clauses and things like that in their contracts and everything from the
Sure.
FIA. Like,
Yeah, that's a good
why
point.
not have something in there that's like the FIA will put out directives regarding certain like sensitive political topics. If you do not follow our directives in these instances, then you will be fined and required to put out a statement or something like that. Like
Hmm.
there are ways that you can say, okay, like you can express your opinion, but if there's something that's like really touchy and we don't want to jump in too early and end up on the wrong side of the coin because people were yelling things out without thinking through what they were saying, yeah, I totally get that. And like,
Sure.
but I don't think that any these all of these drivers are intelligent people. I don't think there's anyone out there who is really going out of their way to just like blurt out the first thing at the top of their mind. Max was like, yeah, I don't say like that much about like politics or give too many political like messages or statements. But he's like, that's because I'm spending so much time being a Formula One driver. I'm not like informed with all of the facts on every issue. It would be
Mm-hmm.
impossible for me to talk on every issue and be like accurate with what I'm saying. He's like, I like, there's no time to always be that up on it. So like he
Mm-hmm.
makes the choice personally to like not make as many statements about that stuff cuz
Mm-hmm.
he's not paying attention to it and doesn't want to say something that like comes off badly because he's just uninformed. I think
Sure.
most of the drivers kind of have that same like opinion. The ones who
Mm-hmm.
are vocal are very well informed about what they're vocal about. So I just, although I see why the FIA would want to like cover their butts and everything and protect Formula One, I just thought I do feel that it's like overstepping kind of
Sure, yeah.
what is necessary for those kinds of situations.
Yeah,
So,
I think I would agree with you.
but I guess we'll see if there's some changes. Christian Horner as well kind of commented on it and was like, hey, like I think it takes away from the driver's ability to express themselves and their personalities. I hope that the FIA kind of finds a middle ground with what they're looking to do here. But another interview, Valtteri was talking with, um, or was doing an interview and basically said that due to the stress and kind of pace of the F1 season and all, it is very mentally taxing. And so he's had to do some work with a psychologist to help recover during the off seasons. And he said that the first assessment the psychologist had about him was that he's almost like a robot who only wants to reach their goal and has no feelings, which is like, I mean, like it's kind of crazy to think how much time and effort that these drivers do put into their sport and their craft. That for some of them, it can kind of get to that where they're just so, they're like their minds encompassed so much by just like, what can I do to get faster? What can I do to drive better? What can I like, car, race, team, and to the point that they're just like, that's like all they. It's like when SpongeBob and the Krusty Krab are doing the fine dining, and like SpongeBob's brain just gets rid of everything, and he's like, all I know is fine dining and breathing. Like, it's like all I know is racing and breathing. Like, and that's definitely a bit of a concern, and so I thought it was nice to hear Valtteri speak out about the mental health of the sport and everything, because I'm sure it's similar across a lot of sports where these athletes are so determined and focused on their craft and on improving and everything that it just kind of just overwhelms them after, especially after a full season of going through it. So good on him for taking care of his mental health, and hopefully him speaking out kind of pushes other people who may need it to seek that as well.
Well, and we found that like there's such strength in sports psychology and athletes being able to learn about their own mind and get past the blocks that they may have in whatever arena of competition they may have. And you're right. I don't think they should be afraid to talk about it. I don't think it should be even remotely close to something even adjacent to taboo. If anything, it's just a weapon that if athletes aren't using it, you're like you're significantly disadvantaging yourself. It's like hearing Daniel Negreanu, poker player, talk about like if you're not using AI in poker right now, like you're fucked. Like what are you doing betting money? Because there are players who are using these you know hand studying AIs that you just won't be able to go up against. So if you're not using the tools available, i.e., sports psychologists or whatever, yeah, you're likely behind the ball. And a season that just like pushes and pushes and pushes for such a large chunk of the year, and then just like abrupt stop, but it's all like slicing at margins and tenths of a second and thousandths of a second and things like this. It's like that's got to be an insanely intense environment that feels similar to like a pressure cooker of some kind. So having an avenue to be able to blow through that or off that or whatever it is, um, even if it's with the help of a professional, go for it. And I'm happy to hear that he's got that tool in his belt. You're muted.
Yeah, that's an interesting point about like how the season ends as well, kind of ending cold turkey-ish. Like these in most professional sports, like when athlete seasons end, there's like a kind of gradual fall off. Like your season ends when you don't make the playoffs. And it's like, okay, it's a stop for you, but your sport's still going on. There's still like guys that you know that you're buddies with and whatnot from training or from college or from whatever that they're still playing and you're following along, watching. And as the playoffs like thin out, those other teams kind of same thing until the last like game of the World Series or whatever, and all of a sudden, okay, now baseball is done. With F1, it's like 20 teams for all these races, and then the last one 20 drivers, 10 teams, and then it's just boop. Okay, no more until
Hmm.
like 4 months from now. Have fun. It's definitely a different kind of scenario for them as opposed to a lot of like professional athletes in their sports.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely an interesting kind of thing to hear about from Valtteri, especially. I feel like we don't hear too much out of him throughout the season in terms of interviews, just some focus on races, how he's doing, and everything. So it's nice to hear from him speaking out about something that he feels is important in his own life. Looking at this upcoming season, Max during an interview was talking about 2023 in the gap, and he said he kind of expects it to be a lot closer in this season in terms of just the competition, because more teams are going to have kind of figured out the different aero, the packages, improvements on engines, consistency improvements, and where the gap got pretty big for Red Bull, there were consistency issues with other teams, both in terms of their car as well as their their race day decisions and things like that, and their game plans and strategies. So now that the cars are kind of gonna close the gap a bit, a lot of that is going to come down to strategy, how the drivers are driving, and looking at kind of some of the competition. Max was asked if Lewis is still going to be a threat in the coming years, and he said, of course he is. He's one of the greatest drivers ever in the sport. If he has the car to do it, he can fight for the title. It's the same for George, Charles, and Lando. If you give them a car that's capable of winning a championship, they can. And so I think that he is kind of preparing himself for a tough fight this year in defense of the title. But it's getting me a little hyped up already. So
Hell yeah. Yeah, that sounds like a pretty confident Max, pretty respectful Max of his opponents and understanding that they're all threats up there. Um
That 300th win curse is looming, though, Lewis. What are you gonna do, Lewis?
Yeah, no shot he ever wins again. Never gonna happen. You heard it here first.
You heard it here first.
No, I would not be surprised to see Lewis get a couple of wins this year. I'll put the over under at 2. For anyone who wants to take a shot, throw it in the YouTube comments or any or Spotify or anything like that. Let us know what you think. But I would say probably gonna get a couple wins this year. But getting excited for the season. Drive to Survive is just beyond the horizon at this point. February 24th release date, and so Max was talking about that a little bit as well, since he'll be returning to the series this season, and he basically said, I hope that they understood like why he stepped away and how he felt about like the way they kind of portrayed him. But he said also, as the world champion, I know that I do kind of have to be a part of it. So he's like, I gave him like an hour of interview. So still not super like diving headfirst into it, but I think it's fair. Like he's focused on racing and all. It's an extra thing, but at least he's aware that it's kind of. It would be very odd to have a full Drive to Survive series without the reigning world champion being a part of any of it. That would be pretty odd.
Well, it would just be very apparent that like
there would be something lacking, like big time.
Right, and like, oh well, yeah, this really wasn't made by the F1 Productions or whatever it is. So yeah, it's good in that case, but yeah, I just kind of hope that they don't portray anything like improperly, like just to get an angle.
Yeah, and I mean, they're always going to have like a plot and kind of story that they're trying to tell, but I think now that they understand like, hey, like he's like felt like we kind of made him this bad guy villain and all, which they kind of did. Like it's I think fair, and hopefully production will go in a better direction, because otherwise say he goes on and wins a third in a row this year. I'm not predicting that. I'm just saying, say he does, and they portray him poorly in this Drive to Survive season, ain't gonna be a part of it again the next time coming around. Like I just don't expect him to like a fool me once, but I'm not gonna get fooled again if they kind of portray him poorly. So hopefully it will just all go smoothly. It'll be a nice little watch and kind of review of the season and everything. But I am looking forward to that coming up. Nice. With that, we do have our race previews for the upcoming season. This week, Justin, what's your dating profile look like?
All right. So we have just a hunk of a Swiss team here with the Australian stylings of a Finnish race winner and the rookie spirit of the Chinese driver Zhou Guanyu.
Okay.
How did I do there?
It was, not as saucy as some of the last ones, but I'm waiting to hear more.
Of course not. Of course not. These boys are solid. They are quiet. They are a little more withdrawn. So we can't be too boisterous with our adjectives here. So Alfa Romeo F1 team Stake is their, one of their title sponsors, based out of Switzerland. Their team chief this year, Alessandro Bravi, alongside their technical chief, Jan Moncho. I think I'm saying that properly. Using a Ferrari power unit this year, I believe. So their first team entry. Now, I had heard just a bunch throughout, just about throughout Formula One, hearing Alfa Romeo and the term Sauber being used in pretty close association. Not saying that it was ever used interchangeably, but it's like the Alfa Romeo Sauber team. And I didn't necessarily understand like what the origins of that were. So Alfa Romeo is in the old Sauber team slot, and it's like their like managing org, or the org that owns the like Formula One team. So it's more about just like companies and who owns who. But their team entry started in 1993 as the Sauber team. Although I'll tell you this is a bit of trivia. The company's works drivers, so the Alfa Romeo works drivers, won the first two drivers' championships. So it was Farina in 1950 and then Fangio in 51 the following year. They got 2 dubs in the drivers' championship and then got out. They were like, all right, boys, we're taking the first 2. We're gonna just prestige like crazy.
Take
And
the
they were
money
out.
and run, baby.
Right. I'll give you a couple of notes. So they withdraw from Formula One and acted only as an engine provider. The current iteration of the company has taken over what once was a Sauber organization and had been managed by a subsidiary of BMW at a time. So a whole bunch of like ownership changes as well. Not a winning org by any means throughout their history. Not really many like big victories to speak of, but they have given rise to a bunch of good talents, Michael Schumacher and Sergio Perez being a couple of them. So, pedigree, where they come from, not that strong, not that worried about it. However, moving forward, here's a couple of things that we can look at to say Alfa Romeo may be in the best position of like their Formula One years.
Okay.
So, back in 1983, with Baldi and Sassari, they achieved 6th in the Drivers' Championship, which they
Six
matched
in the
that.
constructors or drivers?
I believe it was constructors that year. Back in '83, those were just their 2 drivers that they had that did it.
Okay.
Which is going to be matched last year by Valtteri and Zhou. So their best historic year was matched by these 2 drivers here. Zhou Guanyu, I think of the rookie drivers that we've seen, put up the most consistent results. He had his highest result is 8th in Canada last year, so that's pretty strong. And then Valtteri Bottas, coming out of vacation year, he was in the thresher at Mercedes. He was race winning. He was putting up just as good as numbers as Lewis Hamilton was, albeit I don't think he was as good like in the midfield. But overall, if he got a good start to the race, didn't get into trouble, I mean, you saw him on the podium just as much as the other guys. So now that Valtteri, his vacation year's done, he was like, all right, that was really tough. Alfa Romeo, thank you. I'm just going to kick back a little bit. I'm just going to coast here for a minute. I'm looking to see Valtteri come in pretty hot this year. The Australian stylings from down under, I think is going to give him a little bit of pace.
Yeah, I mean, I would say his hair has gotten faster since last season.
I would agree. I mean, clearly that's what my main point is hinging on, is the hair.
So ladies, if you like a good mullet and a sharp-dressed young Chinese man, then let me tell you, Alfa Romeo is for you. 2 good drivers. I agree with you. I think Zhou had a nice rookie season, pretty consistent, and I think he has a lot of a lot of expectations coming in to this coming season to just see, similar to how we had Yuki this past year. We were hoping to see continued progress. I think Yuki did progress in a lot of areas of his driving, but just in a slightly worse car than what he had the previous year. So it'll be exciting since Zhou will have the Alfa Romeo car in the first 2 seasons of the new regulations, that he'll be able to show his progress a little bit more than like we had with Yuki from year to year, going through a big regulation shift. So yeah, very, very nice looking Alfa Romeo team over there. And if they can move up in that constructor standings, even a place, and get that best ever finish for them, that would be pretty sweet.
Yeah, and to be fair, I think the lineup that they have, based on the like mild successes that they had last year, it's like a pretty solid footing in these regulations to build from. And like I was saying with Valtteri, race winner, he knows how to do it. So if they have the car, he'll be able to, at least be in points grabbing positions. That's what I'll say. And Zhou, I think, can only get better based on what we've seen from him. They matched their best result. I think going into this year, I'm like really excited for like a P5 or a P4 in the constructors, and to see them like really achieve something that is like monumental for the organization, and like will solidify Alfa Romeo as like, we've done some good things here.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of looking over to my team, McLaren, it's a pretty stark contrast between them and Alfa Romeo. So started way back in the day. Similarly, they started back in 1962, but joined Formula One in 1963. They've had quite a lot of different sponsorships and names over the years, Marlboro being one of the longest running ones for the team. They have won 8 Constructors' Championships, have had names the likes of Hakkinen, Mansell, Coulthard, Lauda, Prost, Senna, Raikkonen, Fittipaldi, Hamilton, just about any big name that you could name in Formula One. They have pretty much seen them come through the ranks. So a very, very storied constructor there with McLaren. Looking at the drivers that they have 2 pretty young drivers who have a lot of great experience. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing how this team does, especially with their rookie driver Oscar Piastri. They have Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris, who both have just kind of prime pedigrees for racers. Looking at Lando, 23-year-old guy, he came in first in Formula Renault 2.0 for the Euro Cup and NEC in 2016. First in the F3 European Championship in 2017. Second only to George Russell in F2 in 2018. And has just progressed in Formula One. He's gone from 11th in 2020 to 9th in 2021 to finishing 7th in the Drivers' Championship in 2022. So if the trajectory is going to follow, I expect him to be 5th place after this coming season. But really, Lando has been a very solid point for McLaren over the past couple of years. He's had some really standout performances, very few lows, very few bad races across the board, and just a good, solid racing driver who I think has a lot of potential to win races if he's given a car to be able to do that. So I think Lando is kind of primed for this year, and hopefully McLaren can give him the car he needs to compete while he's still in such a impressive like part of his career with his driving.
Yeah.
On the side of Oscar Piastri, we have yet to see him in Formula One, of course, but he's a young 21-year-old. He finished second in the British F4 Championship in 2018 with six wins. He finished first in Formula Renault 2019 with 7 wins, first in Formula 3 in 2020 with 2 wins, first in F2 in 2021 with 6 wins. So he is just won again and again and again, similarly on the way up the ranks like Lando. So I think with the two of them, if Oscar can turn out to be a similar quality of driver to Lando in terms of he's shown his quality on these on his way up through the ranks to Formula One, similarly to Lando. If he can produce the way Lando is, McLaren is going to have a very, very good team for a number of years to come. I really do expect if Piastri can kind of hold up his performances and his trajectory, that they will be competing for a Constructors Championship around the time that Zach Brown said they'll be competing for race wins in the next 2 to 3 years, because I think the talent that this lineup has is very, very impressive.
Interesting. So based on what you've seen, you believe Zach Brown's like prediction will be like right on par? Is that what you're getting at?
More so that if his prediction about the car being like so if the car is going to be competitive and give the drivers the ability to be competitive in the next 2 to 3 years, then the quality of drivers that they have, I do expect to utilize that to really be competing in the top for that championship.
Gotcha. Okay.
So as long as the car can keep up with these two drivers, then I think that gives McLaren really good prospects down the line.
Nice. Yeah, that pretty much all checks out. I agree with a good amount of that. I don't know a whole lot about Oscar Piastri, but yeah, they'll likely find significant improvement over what Daniel was able to produce, and just in that will be a boon.
Yeah, and sometimes, and not to knock Daniel as a driver, but sometimes it's time for a new face, and if something isn't clicking with the team, that doesn't mean that either side is bad. It's just not clicking. It's
right. That's all.
It's like Andy Reid with the Philadelphia Eagles. The man was a great coach for a long time, brought the Eagles to a Super Bowl, multiple NFC championships, but couldn't get the job done. And after a while, it's like, hey, time for something new. Like, we wish you all the best. And since going to Kansas City, he has won a Super Bowl. He's gone to multiple Super Bowls to compete. And so sometimes it's just a change of scenery that can make the biggest difference. Oscar Piastri coming in, we don't know his talent level and all, but maybe a new face just brings some extra life to that team. So,
yeah, no, that's a great comparison. Andy Reid's my favorite football coach, so yeah,
big fan. I love Big Red. He's a good guy, even if I'm rooting against him this weekend in the Super Bowl for the Eagles. So, that is my team preview for McLaren and yours for Alfa Romeo. Any final notes for Formula One before we move along to the League of Legends scene?
No, I don't think so. Just that, it's been interesting to take a look at these team profiles and learn a little bit about the competing orgs. But no, that's all I had for this.
Sounds good. Well, we will move right along. Do you want to start off with the LCK or LPL or LEC? Any preference there?
Yeah, I'd be happy to start. I'd be happy to start with the LCK over here on my side. We just have a 2-game series here between Brion and KT Rolster. And, I have to say it was an interesting series. I think the teams were pretty evenly matched going into it. I believe Brion was 3-2 and KT Rolster was 2-3.
Mm.
So pretty even matchups going into it. And what is so surprising um, about the first game is solid control in the early game from Brion,
Mm.
where Umti has full control of the early game on Elise. She's stealing Cuz's jungle. She's just being very proactive on the map and helping the team in general. Karis, the Victor player in the mid lane, has solid push against BDD in the mid. He has pressure from Elise, Cuz not really able to help out. So a lot of things going really well for Brion in the early game, and unfortunately, the the top lane though from KT Rolster is just doing numbers against Nar, and that's really where the cracks begin to show in this first game of the series. That was Brion big time from the start.
Yeah, I would have to agree because looking at the drafts, I did think that KT had a better draft overall. I didn't think that doesn't mean that Brion's draft was bad, but I liked just what they were looking to do with their comp. There was a lot more in terms of team fighting that I'm seeing there, as opposed to Brion having a pretty poke heavy comp. But I think one of the toughest parts with a kind of poke heavy comp with a Gnar there as well is that you really have to play so intelligently and like proactively when you have the Gnar, because you're trying to get the Gnar ultimate out and up and ready to go, but if your Gnar is diving into a 5-man team and no one's taken any damage before the fight starts, and all of your team has very like spell oriented follow up damage, like you're waiting on a gnarl and then hoping to burst people out because you're not getting consistent damage output from Victor. You're getting bursts with his lasers, you're getting maybe the ultimate sitting on some people. Varus, same thing. You're hoping to lock people down with the ultimate and use some poke damage. Heimerdinger, same kind of deal. So like you are really relying on some very clean play from your side to get poke damage down early while Gnar is stacking up his Gnar bar for the ultimate and then hoping to get a good ultimate. I don't think the draft and the choices are bad. I just think it's a really tough to play out team comp where KT Rolster, they're like, oh yeah, Jace hits a shock blast on someone and we're just all in. Like you've got the Zeri running in there, Rise just pumping out DPS, Wukong spinning to win. Like it's a much easier team comp to play out for KT Rolster. And I think in this kind of early season kind of midfield matchup, if you have an easier team comp that's a similar power level, it's just gonna help you a lot.
Yeah, and I like your points about the Gnar, where it seems just a little bit out of place in the poking team in the poking comp, where like you're saying you have to execute it better than average to make it go well, and we saw that Gnar really consistently only hit like one or two people with his Gnarl, not getting a lot of value there. And that led to them not having like great neutral objective like setup or control, in the sense that I think they got some pretty low Heimerdinger value as well, where I don't think Effort was able to like really get to those neutrals, set up a bunch of turrets, get the vision down, and just like make it impenetrable for KT Rolster to come in. So I think some good picks, just not getting like the highest value out of them in game one, and then KT Rolster is able to turn it around with a couple of pretty decisive fights in the I would say like later game there.
Yeah, and that's another just slight falter. Brion had, I felt like, some pretty good map control throughout the game. They were pressuring objectives well. They were just like moving around the map pretty well. But really, one of their biggest, I guess, like flaws or errors was just not. Like trying to push those objective wins a little too far. Like you said, it was just a couple of team fight losses. They initially won the team fight at Elder, killing BDD on the rise, pushing off KT, but then they don't get on the Elder very quickly. They kind of mosey about a little bit. And next thing you know, Rise is coming back in and just shutting them down and turning that on its head, getting KT the Elder Dragon. Then KT, once they had the lead, I was like, they played it out super, super well. To the point that when Brion got that second Elder Dragon, didn't matter because they lost the fight and the game was over. So it's like...
Right.
Yeah, so I think KT played... I think they were getting outplayed for a lot of that game, but they made the right decisions later in the game, which is
for sure
one of those things that the teams learn. I mean, Brion has some good pieces of their roster and everything, but I think there is still some youth and some knowledge to be gained for their team that will hopefully help them moving forward. But getting into game two, that was a pretty stark contrast to game one.
Yeah, and to the degree, KT Rolster just takes it in a 2-0, and I think the victory even just started in the draft. I thought the Yone into the Kassadin was just like a big draft dub right there, where it's and not even like the AD versus AP thing, but just the scaling element where like Yone is going to be able to turn on and be a threat so much sooner than Kassadin. Like you even heard the casters talking about it. They were like, it's practically a 4v5 in the early game.
Oh, yeah.
He really wants that Rod of Ages to stack up. He really wants that Seraphs to stack up. So yeah, I think that was a pretty tough matchup in that scenario. And then we see, to my eyes, the uncommon Ezreal with the common we're seeing Karma, but it seemed like a pretty good pick into the Ashe and Heimerdinger, at least the way they were playing it in the bottom lane.
Yeah, and I think aiming just looked unbelievable on the Ezreal. He looks so clean on it, and once you get ahead, it's definitely easier, of course, but he was playing that out so well, and KT really put him in a position to be successful. Excuse me. They focused a lot around the top lane early, knowing that BDD had kind of that earlier power spike in the mid lane matchup. They put a lot of pressure in that top side of the jungle. They found Umti and really put pressure on him, getting him really far behind early to the point he couldn't really come back too well. Putting Morgan behind and having Keen really have a solid lead in the top lane there. And so, like, the ability to put so much pressure on the top drew a lot of attention and just allowed aiming to be down there bot lane, farming minions, getting all the tower plate or the turret plates on the first tower, just like sitting there like la-di-da-di-da, I'm Ezreal, and I have items now to just go and destroy you, and just coming in, throwing out, like the first I don't know, 10 minutes of the game, all he was doing was occasionally throwing out an Ezreal across map. But once he hit those item spikes and everything, it was stupid.
Oh yeah, and his teamwork with Lehens was pretty on point. Obviously, the movement from Lehens early in the game to get the first blood on Umti just kind of sets up the rest of the game. But you're right. I think KT Rolster was able to really enable Ezreal in that scenario. So it wasn't just him looking good; it was his team helping him to look good in that scenario. But yeah, I think just a pretty aggressive team comp played out well in the early game, won in 23 minutes, so they didn't even let Brian scale at all. The Ash Heimerdinger pretty much non-existent. They just didn't care about the damage and just pushed it through before they even had any time.
Yeah, and just a like pretty brutal win for KT. Brian had 2 kills. Outside of that, no Barons, no Dragons, no Heralds, no turrets. So just a tough game from Brian, and I think it really does kind of fall back to that draft in a lot of ways, because they clearly showed that with a relatively even matchup that they can kind of hang to some extent. But yeah, hopefully that's something to learn from and all. But KT Rolster, I think that puts them a little bit more back where we would have expected them to be coming into the season. Since they do have a very good roster of players. I don't think anyone expected them to be kind of at 2-3 that early, and now at 3-3. So they're definitely a dangerous team to kind of keep an eye on as the season moves forward.
Yeah, especially with that resiliency, like, being knife to the throat pretty early on in the early game of the first game, and then just having the resilience. I mean, they had even like pushing into their base. They were taking advantages, but they were able to hold them off. So yeah, I think well played from KT Rolster. So that's our LCK series here for the week. Now, Aaron, you want to lead us into the LEC game here that we watched between BDS and Vitality?
Yeah, absolutely. So looking at this matchup for BDS and Vitality, it was kind of just a little bit of a clown fiesta of a game. To bring that League of Legends term back, it it was just pretty crazy. Looking at the draft initially, one of the things that really stood out to me based on kind of what we're seeing from the LPL, from the LCK and all, the Lucian Nami is still like decently prevalent, but I felt like the focus on that for the side of BDS was a little bit unnecessary. I feel like they may have been able to find a slightly better option in terms of like team comp and everything for that bot lane. I don't know.
Gotcha.
I just don't know if the focus is really as important as teams are making it. Especially in the LEC, it's Lucian is essentially a pick ban champion. If he makes it through, Nami, we're seeing some of these other champions, but I think in the LPL and LCK are seeing some more different options in that bot lane as well, and some different combinations of champions. But
sure, but you can't deny that it's a premier aggressive choice.
It is, and it has its strengths, but I think
Wukong Akali, I think it looks pretty good there.
It does. It just doesn't leave them with a lot of, or I guess it just puts them in a position where they have to really be pretty bursty and are grouping a lot for these team fights. And so when you're facing off with, especially a team comp with a Gwen and some really good range, some really good disengage, I mean, you have the Azir range, you have the Varus range, you have the Ashe range coming from Vitality, and a Gwen that can split push. Your team's focus is on 5v5 team fights, and the other team is not trying to fight you 5v5 at all. Mm-hmm. Like, it's a very, like, contrasting team comp, and so I think, could have maybe been a little bit better if they had gone for maybe a slightly different bot lane, or maybe even a different top lane. I thought the Gwen pick from Photon was a good pick against the Cassante, because you do allow yourself to have that split push potential and all, as opposed to having to group up and team fight. But Gwen has no real issues with that either. So I thought it was a pretty smart pick in that top lane matchup with the, I think that was the last pick that they took, that, the Gwen. So
yeah, I believe so. Yeah, and pairing it with the double archers bot lane, I have here in my notes seeing the archers like show up in both AD or support role, and them having to them being considered to have so much utility, being like the hawk shot, you get the mandate, which like buffs all the other, I believe it's other like AD damage being dealt. It may scale AP damage as well, but I think it's overall like a team buff that's being applied. And just between the two, you get so much lockdown, so much slow, so much crowd control, just able to keep people in the pocket for Gwen to just like run over and slice up. So yeah, just from Vitality's perspective, I really like their team comp. They're both like immobile archers in the bottom lane, but if you're able to kite back pretty well, obviously their scoreline not that great, but definitely contributed to the win. But man, this was just like the perk show when it came to that like mid to late game. Some of the turret defenses he had, like some of the teleports to like close up kills, so they were able to like spread out, get lanes pushed out, take a dragon here, do this. I think Perks was really like player of the game. Obviously, he was a big part in a game that was definitely BDS focused in the early game, like their team comp, like you were talking about, is supposed to do. I mean, Bo was dead. I think it was like 5 times in the first 30 seconds. So that was just like really bad for Team Vitality. But interestingly enough, like he was able to make some solid mid game plays that were just like low risk, medium reward. It was like 2 or 3 times in a row. And it's like, all right, like now you're not that far behind anymore. So yeah, just like interesting. What would you say, like game flow in that way?
Well, very, very interesting, because it wasn't, unfortunately, it wasn't the first 30 seconds that that Bo died 3 times, because it was really slow to start. I mean, it took about 10 minutes until we have our first like big skirmish. We have the top lane gank there from Vitality. They are so close to getting at him in the top lane, and he just sneaks out, and then Bo just shoots himself in the foot, to be honest. I mean, he goes across the wall there towards the blue buff. He realizes he has gone too far. They don't get the kill on Adam. He's charging up that punch to go right back across, and whoop, right into the wall. Doesn't make it across, gives up the kill, and so it really just kind of starts to snowball there, and BDS really like focused on picking on Bo, which was smart on their part. But I do think that it was an issue for BDS that they waited so long. They were so reactive to Vitality throughout the game. They weren't pushing their own like pressure very forcefully. The fact that they have such a strong early game team comp, and the first kill of the game is 10, 11 minutes in because of a failed gank from Vitality, is not really where you want to be with that team comp. And it kind of consistently was that way throughout the game. I mean, BDS is looking to get all of these objectives or kills. Not objectives. They had bad objective control, allowing Vitality to get dragons, to get heralds. They're focusing on getting kills and trying to get leads in lane, but they get to a 7-0 kill score while Vitality has a 2k gold lead. And it's like there's something just not adding up, and so they're like trying to put Bo behind. Vitality is just getting like bursted super hard in team fights, but Vitality is still consistently the team that's like pressuring these objectives or putting themselves in these positions for these team fights to start, where BDS is just kind of like hanging around, like it's Vitality's on Baron while Sheo is swinging around trying to get a wraparound gank and everything, or it's like Vitality's at Dragon, Vitality's doing this. BDS is constantly like reacting to that, and although they were able to get kills, they were able to get some leads in the game, they weren't able to, like, this team comp that they have is not a 45-minute game team comp. That's a 30-minute max. Like, you are getting early leads, pushing advantages. Akali is doing stupid damage and soloing out and dodging an Ashe arrow and nuking an Ashe in one shot and then getting into the back line. Like, there's no... BDS just really did not play out to their team comp. The team comp's great. It like you said, other than the Lucian Nami, I just felt like that didn't leave them options to
like scale
or just play differently at all. It kind of just isolates them into this like go in team comp where you have to be super close and brawly and everything, where the other team has this range. But outside of that, like, your team comp is all trying to do the same thing. Like, it's got a target and you've got a goal that you're trying to reach, but they didn't ever actually actively try to utilize it the way it should be. It was constantly, we have all this damage and burst and CC and everything. Let's wait till Vitality wants to fight, and then we will go and try and use it. Like, not being proactive at all, really, throughout the game.
Well, and unfortunately, I think by the time they had openings for proactive plays, like, Perks was just too well set up to, like, they just weren't going to be able to get pressure on the turret. Like, the one play in the bottom lane where Bo gets the cease and desist all the way on Lucian, goes, like, 3-4 deep in the back line, and that was all Vizier, just setting up the soldiers, setting up the wall.
And he still didn't die.
As Vi, like, runs back through the defenses. So yeah, there was a point where I think BDS just wasn't getting through, and ultimately the scaling advantage just went to Vitality.
Yeah, it definitely did. I mean, Bo hit his 1-9 power spike. Just really, really was what is that called? He was really bluffing. He
Sandbagging.
Sandbagging. Jesus, I couldn't think of the word. But yeah, really sandbagged it through most of the game, and then
He's like, oh, I've never played this game before.
was like, okay, like I learned how to first time Vi. Sorry guys, in all chat, and then in the late game just gets big enough that he can't get bursted out. The Guardian Angel was a great pickup. He got to utilize that multiple times in the late game, and I mean, they just really outlasted BDS, which isn't a like shining accomplishment on their behalf because, like I said, although they were getting objectives and all, they were losing every team fight that they had for the early game. They just unfortunately were against a team that didn't quite know what to do with that advantage that they had. So I am wary of this Vitality team, but at 7-2, they've had a good start to the season. They are just above Mad Lions, up in first place. But yeah, I think that there are some weaknesses that definitely need to be shored up for them. And BDS just, I think they have some growth. They need to be more proactive, in my opinion, to really take advantage of their play style.
Yeah, especially like to help close out the game. Obviously, they had a pretty good game plan in the early levels to get a bunch of kills and punish the jungler that was out of position. But yeah, knowing how to like tie all that up into a victory and neutral control is going to be a big boon for them. But yeah, overall, letting that one slip through their fingers to the Western Goat, fucking Perks and Vitality.
Oh yeah, Perks. He's I will have to look a bit more. I saw I Will Dominate kind of not singing his praises and saying that he has been kind of a questionable team member for Vitality thus far, but nonetheless they are up there in first place. So
sure.
Good bit of season to go in this winter season round robin for the LEC EMEA. But I'm looking forward to kind of seeing how it shakes out. Perks is finding success, which I'm happy for. I like him as a player, as a personality. So I pull for him when it fits.
Yeah, but I hope Bo just cleans up his early game, or like that's going to be a serious liability for that team. I feel like.
Yeah, that was pretty rough. I've had some teammates like Bo, so
sure. I think we all have. Bo is in our hearts.
I've been that teammate.
I am that teammate.
But
Bo, you are in our hearts.
Yes. Thoughts and prayers. But looking over towards the LPL and the matchup we had there, we looked at the IG versus EDG matchup. Another one that ended in a 2-0, similarly to the LCK, but we did, I think, overall have some pretty interesting looks from both teams in this. IG in game one going with the Draven pick with the Varus support. It was interesting. They were in both these games really going after that double marksman bot lane comp. The Varus support was really interesting. I think that was a nice little pick from IG to kind of keep it interesting, waiting till EDG makes the Sivir pick to go ahead and pick the Draven as the bot laner and shift that Varus to support. So having these marksmen that are also flex picks as well to the support role, I think makes it a little bit more interesting down there in the bot lane. And then the Fiora and Jax matchup in the top lane, always kind of an exciting one to see with the two split pushers that can kind of get after each other a little bit. It's a fun top lane, but overall, like really, really similar team comps coming out of the first draft. And so it kind of does come down to who just plays it better.
Yeah, and this one went to the side of the League of Draven. Dude, it's so funny just to watch him just like farming minions, farming minions, farming minions. And then when those axes hit players, you're just like, yikes, dude. It is
Oh.
so much. And the damage quickly took over team fights. And he was just soaking up those cash-ins, and quickly he was just like the most farmed member on the server, and like the whole game just becomes about him. I think in the early game, Ale played really well against the Jacks. Didn't really give up like insane pressure in that scenario.
No, not at all.
But yeah, once that bottom lane cracked open and On was just spinning those axes, it was kind of crazy.
Yeah, well, and another thing that was like just bizarre to me from EDG's side, and I guess with the big focus on pressure top lane, they just kind of left the bot lane to their own devices, and Leave and Mako are looking to scale. On and Wink have some really good early game damage, and just from that, IG's able to get an uncontested Dragon Soul very early in this game. 4 dragons to 0. Like, they had too much damage in that bot lane in a 2v2 fight to like just be able to push Sivir and Karma off of the dragon if they wanted to take it. Really, I think that obviously helps them a lot to just gain these kind of smaller leads that just build and grow. But yeah, the Draven damage once we were getting to that end game was insane as they're pushing down to end. His axes are like chunking Karma with a shield to like half health with one hit. It was a pretty brutal way to end. But game 2, there was a little bit of a shift. Still very similar in terms of the team comps to what they had in game 1. But EDG does go for that Jace pick in the top lane, where YSKM goes for the Irelia, which was a little bit of a surprise for me. I don't think that Irelia has been picked very much. It just looking here, it looks like it was maybe picked one other time so far in the in the LPL. So not a very popular one coming in there.
No, not popular at all, and they definitely took a risk getting in there in the early game. That trade could have gone either way. The Irelia player gets the best of Ale in that scenario, and dude, that was sweet. And to be fair, that's what you check into the top lane for. You love seeing those 1v1s, like no jungle assistance, no nothing going on, just two people going mano a mano, and that I think that really cracked open the advantage there for Invictus Gaming, because you even saw them just like trading objectives where they just let the Irelia push top. They said, okay, let the Varus and the Heimer have the advantage bottom lane. They just said, all right, fine, we're just going to trade those turrets. So I think Invictus Gaming playing really heads up in that scenario, where they just like, all right, we'll just take the advantage that we had and just go that way, basically. Point against, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, and with having the 1v1 lead with the Irelia and YSKM, they pushed that really hard too against Ale and really tried to shut down the Jace in the top lane, which was like huge later on in the game.
Well, and it just ends up being like your win condition after a certain point. Like, you're just playing a 4v5 if you go that direction. Oh, yeah. Any other player that encounters that Jace, he's going to be down gold. You're going to have the advantage. I have to say, from Invictus Gaming's point of view, Wink 5-1-9, but I really don't like the support MF. Unless they're being fed gold, you don't get that like massive damage that you're expecting, and ultimately you're just kind of sugarcoating these team fights, and it doesn't seem like the best strat. So
I think
Go
part
ahead.
of it that they were going for with it was to kind of slow down EDG to allow Sivir and the rest of their team to get on top of them a little bit more, because that was it was an AP misfortune support. So
Yeah.
your hail of bullets that you have coming down, the like rain circle bullets, like
Mhm.
has a massive AP scaling on the slow, so you can really kind of lock, like if you max that out plus have AP damage, like you get ridiculous slows on the end of on the enemy team. So it allows you to have that chase down potential with the Sivir. You also have the Sejuani ult. Another thing that I thought was a really smart pickup from IG was the Sylas in the mid lane while they have the Sejuani, because if you a lot of times we see the Sylas opposite the Sejuani to be able to steal that ultimate away and
Mhm.
kind of have that disengage or counterplay, but to kind of block that off, I think made a pretty nice addition to the team comp there. But
Mhm.
but yeah, I think the misfortune, it was more about not necessarily putting out massive damage or anything, but really like locking people in and like doing as like kind of allowing your team to put out this damage relatively uncontested.
Sure. Yeah, from that perspective, I agree with it, especially looking at they don't have too much like AoE CC. It's a lot of like single target lockdown. So yeah, in that scenario, I might actually agree with it. So yeah, it looks a lot better in that scenario.
Yeah, but not always the biggest misfortune support fan. I think it worked well based on, and that's based on like the interactions with the Sejuani, with, like I said, the Sylas being on their side to kind of avoid some of that additional peel that the teams could have. Because we also saw
Hmm.
Wink get immediately knocked out of team fights multiple
Yeah.
times with the Poppy ult from Gigi, and that was also something that I'm not sure if it was the best like play, just in terms of which target you're using that Poppy ultimate on. You're using it on
Right.
the support who's not necessarily putting out the most damage. Um, so I think that there were some missteps from EDG, but Invictus Gaming really pressed their leads very well, moved around the map well. And even though they had some slip ups in team fights and everything, like at the Herald when they started off and then just kind of overextended chasing after additional kills, they played it out pretty well in the rest of the game there.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think it had a lot to do with the way they played their Baron engages. Like, I think they had to disengage off the like their winning Baron play. I think they had to disengage off of it like two or three times from the aggression coming out of EDG,
Mm-hmm.
and that decisiveness with which to all pull off at the same time, and then like the clean call to say like, all right, it's clear, let's go back on it. But then, even though you've gone back on it, clear decisive call to say like, no, 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 fight again, clear off the Baron. So to see that, I'll use the term again, decisiveness in the Baron pit from IG, I think is what helped just just clinch that victory up in a game where EDG I think did have some team fighting options,
Mm.
but their play around the Baron was pretty clean.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that decisiveness and like team cohesion, like the not just like someone's making the call, but everyone is following
Right,
it and all,
right. The hive mind
is
aspect of it to all
so
do it.
so huge. And I feel like that is a big part of, I mean, IG is 3-0 in their matches so far with a
Yep.
6-0 record overall. They've 2-0'd
Hmm.
all of their matches. That's definitely something that they have going right on their in their team camp and everything. And I think that their that cohesion and all, and the way that they are playing together so far, just looks really promising for them moving forward. Like they are definitely one of the teams to beat. So I do expect a lot from them.
Yeah, yeah, big time. And just to note one last thing, their ban strategy looks pretty good too. Like looking at a lot of the like best in role champions and just getting rid of them and like not caring about certain other things. Like I'm not seeing any like wonkiness coming out of their system. It looks like they're pretty attuned into like what's going to kill them.
Yeah, I would agree. They just look very solid overall. So, an impressive,
Understand the meta.
yeah, an impressive performance playing it out too. Because knowing the meta is one thing, but being able to translate that into wins is another.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But that kind of wraps up our League of Legends talk for this week. We'll have some IEM Katowice next week with some CSGO and that tournament. But Justin, I believe you had some Magic the Gathering you wanted to chit chat on, maybe.
Yeah, just a little bit of deck building stuff. Because we got a bunch of games in this weekend, so I was able to play a couple with the Michigan gang, a couple with Commander 9 on Monday. And I played, even though I've been brewing a couple lists, there's one that just always sticks in my mind. It's the green, black, blue deck, Muldrotha, where it was previously the commander was Yerk the Desecrated, where he like doubles enter the battlefield effects. But I never really found a good spot for it. It was kind of wonky. The strategy was all over the place. But I made a couple of key card draw swaps and changed the commander to the commander that should have been from the start based on the cards that were in the 99. And when I originally did that, it felt really good. And now I've just been like trying to practice, get games in. So I played a bunch of that this week. And man, it feels good. Like so much better than before. Like, dude,
Why
if
did you
you've
go
ever
with the last commander? Any
well, because he
particular
was
reason?
cool. Because
Okay.
at the time that I built the deck, he was cool and new, and I really liked him. And like in those colors, you can just you get to play a lot of the strongest effects, really.
Okay.
And so you're just like, oh, this is just like a good value commander, whatever. Um, but but I could never make my own strategy work with it. I changed it to Muldrotha, and now it just hums. I was drawing so many cards, just getting so much value, and like really building quickly towards wins in a way that like it just didn't before. So just seeing it hum in that way is really, really fun, and just like
Was this
nice.
one
In go
of
ahead.
was this one of your like rebuild decks that you were working on after talking with friend of the show Buddha?
It would have been before that, but
Okay.
like, but similar kind of idea where like you have to unmarry yourself from the previous idea and say like, no, it's gonna be better in this way. So like, all definitely informed by those thoughts.
Okay.
So yeah, just cool to see it in action, get a bunch of practice in with it, and just like really, really get to know it. And I think I'm gonna look to do that more in the future with a couple of my lists, being that my deck building is going to hit a low here. We're just going to get intimate with some of my deck lists, and that was what we were doing this week. So that was fun. And then just a little mention here. I believe we may be getting back to some pick and ban games later because I had thrown the idea out, and it sounds like a couple players are going to have some enough decks to be able to go back to that, and I think that'd be pretty fun. So maybe we'll be looking forward to some of that here in the future. But yeah, just a lot of games on Muldrotha, and it was fun.
Nice. I love that, and looking forward to hearing about any pick and ban games you have. I know bringing some of the new guys into the fold for the Commander 9 especially, they were newbies a little bit growing their collections and decks and all, so that's cool that they're diving in a bit more, and you'll be able to do that, because that I mean, it definitely like tailors itself towards like some interesting probably pods in terms of, oh, like I really want to play this, but I don't want to deal with that, so let me get rid of it and all. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's I think it's just a good even way to build a commander pod in a world where I haven't seen any really solid strategies like put up or recommended. So I think that's just a good one to use. And I think commander decks are pretty easy to have like a good amount of. And we're getting there. But yeah, I've been hogging here for a little bit. Give me your flavor of the week here, sir.
Sounds good. So for my music this week, I was revisiting some Mac Miller, Watching Movies with the Sound Off. I love that album a lot. It's got a really cool sound, very unique in my mind as a project, and I enjoy a lot of the just different songs, different sounds, the way that the album is put together. So it was fun to just revisit that a bit. For my
I Am Who I Am, Killing Time. I think that's the best song. Not the best song. That's my favorite song on the album.
I think Red Dot Music is my favorite on the album.
With Action Bronson, like, that's a good one.
It's just like, it's a cool song, and I had something typed up that I meant to like look up, because at one point in the song he's like, oh, like Action Bronson, one of his lines is like, oh, I rigged the game between Kentucky and Miami of Ohio, and I wanted to look that up and actually see what game he was talking about, because I was like that is too specific to like not be about an actual game where Kentucky, one of the best like NCAA basketball programs in that era, like got beat by a no-name. Like Miami of Ohio is a tiny little school, so I was curious to look that up, but forgot to before the episode. But overall, just a cool project, fun to revisit. I enjoy going back to a lot of Mac Miller's albums.
Rest in peace, brother.
Absolutely. It's always tough. I've been very happy that his family and his what, I forget what that's called, but like
the estate
has continued to release some of the different things that he had recorded and all since then. I appreciate it for sure. But my food for this week, it was a tough choice. I had, on Friday, I'd gone out with some friends in Chinatown and gotten some Szechuan Chinese food, so really, really spicy. Lots of
Szechuan sauce, Morty. That's gonna be our arc. That's our arc, Morty. The Szechuan sauce, Morty.
But with that being delicious food and delicious sauce, and super, super spicy foods, I then had Shady Maple breakfast the next morning for Pop-Op's 94th birthday, so a big happy birthday to him. It was a nice time, and neither of those two are my flavor of the week. My flavor of the week is the Lebanese restaurant that I went to with my my college friends on Saturday night. It was a tasting menu. I was a glutton this past weekend. It was too much food, but it was delicious. I couldn't turn it away. Including at this Lebanese restaurant, we're like chowing down. We're having a nice dinner, and it's like a tasting menu. So there's like 14 of us. They're bringing out 4 plates of each thing that we had ordered. There were like 5 entrees, a few appetizers, 5 appetizers, like 3 entrees, a couple desserts, like going through. And one of the entrees was this lamb with like tzatziki, and it was like, it just melted in your mouth. And so that was towards the end of the meal that they brought that out. So everyone's pretty full. We've been eating, hanging out, having a nice time. And this lamb was just too damn good, man. Colleen and I had taken an edible as we're like before eating dinner, and so I'm like, there's 4 plates of this lamb. I take like my little bit of one of the plates and everything, and I'm eating, and I'm like, oh my god, this is so good. And like, there's a plate and a half on my side of the table that's just like not being touched, and I'm like, this lamb is so good, and the people are like, have more. I'm like, okay. Right. So I like go and I take a little bit more of the one plate and everything, and then I finish it, and I'm like, this lamb is so good. I'm like, I'm still good to go. And I'm like, does anyone want any more of this lamb? And everyone's like, nah, I'm like stuffed. I'm so full. Everything's so good. I'm like, I'm going to have a little more of this lamb. I probably ate 2 of the 4 plates of that lamb. It was not the best look for me, but it was so good. I felt bad leaving it. Every time I'm like, does anyone want more of this lamb? They're like, no, we're good. And I'm like, all right then, I'm not leaving it to go to waste. Like, it was delicious. So that the Lebanese food was my top of the weekend of gluttony. I don't think I've been that stuffed since Thanksgiving. So a nice food weekend for me. And then my visual medium to round it out is Colleen and I'm working my way through. We finished the first season of One Tree Hill. That was I promised. We made a deal. She said she would watch the Lord of the Rings movies with me if I would watch One Tree Hill with her. I did tell her it was going to take us some time to get through it. It's taken us a couple of months to get through the first season, which is like 22 episodes long. It's ridiculous. But overall, I don't think I missed out back in the day, but it's not a bad show. I'm finding like some enjoyment in it, even though it's not like top of my list. She loves it. She's like sucked in watching it, so I get sucked in watching it, and it's been pretty decent. But it's been the most watched show of this past week, so it had to make the flavor of the week.
The lore of that's got to be deep. Is One Tree Hill? Is there murder? Do people die in the show?
People definitely die in the show. I haven't gotten to any murder yet, so we'll wait and see. At least season 1 was murderless. It's a lot of high school drama, and this person likes that person, and this like all those things they hit on. It's kind of
wait till you get to the murder. That's when it really gets good.
It's kind of like the previous like generation's Euphoria, I think, where
no, believe me, I'm well aware.
I was not very aware of it. This is the first that I've really looked at it. But
no, I'm telling you, it gets better once the murder starts. I just didn't know where you were.
We're pre-murder right now.
Okay,
so,
okay, you'll be way more invested. Just wait. You keep your eyes peeled.
But yeah, it's not too bad of a show. I'm enjoying kind of watching with Colleen because I know it's like her favorite show of all time. So
there you go.
It's a
so
nice
you're
watch
down with
through.
the memes.
Yeah, exactly. So we're having a good time. But that is my flavor of the week.
Nice. Damn, dude, that's crazy. I was at Shady Maple 2 this weekend. We must have just brushed shoulders. That's actually my food here for the week.
Wait, were you there on Saturday?
I was there on Saturday, yeah, like
breakfast?
Later in the evening.
Okay.
No, not for breakfast.
Gotcha. We're big Shady Maple breakfast fans.
Sure. I mean, yeah, it is quite a complex there, and walking around. yeah, we were doing some grocery shopping, and it's just a fun experience. Everybody's so friendly there. We really enjoyed it. My music here for the week, I was listening to Joey Badass's All American Badass. Great little album. I like the tunes. Pretty, like, I would say maybe a little withdrawn, maybe a little like reserved, but yeah, overall just a clean album, fun to go back to. So that's my music here for the week. And then my visual medium, me and Sarah, we are just Marvel fanatics. We can't get enough, dude. We love it.
How far
Spider
along are we?
Dude, we watched Spider-Man No Way Home. Just one movie. We watched
Okay,
Spider-Man
okay.
No Way Home. We got Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness up next. But I have to say the whole spoiler alert, bring in Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield in as the, other Spider-Man that like we know is like super fun. It's a way that they can go like with the multiverse thing, but bring back characters that like we've already been introduced to, not just like weird different Spider-Man,
Right,
but like old ones.
like the Into the Spider-Verse Spider-Man, where it's got like noir Spider-Man and like
Right.
all these different ones. Yeah, that's a cool like way to integrate that.
Yeah, and overall, I just thought it was a really fun film. A lot of like big feels moments. The end was very surprising, and you see a lot of growth for Spider-Man. Just like kind of in one big moment, the the scene between him and the scene between Peter Parker and MJ in that little donut shop is like super touching, super cool. So yeah, we really enjoyed the watch through, and the so we learned, and it just having a name immediately made it feel so much like more palpable in like what they were doing. So phases, it seems like phases 4, 5, and 6 are going to be what's known as the multiverse saga, where
Mm,
the first three phases were the Infinity Saga. And I'm
okay.
like, all right, like I'm kind of down with that. So yeah, just overall, excited to see where it goes. I thought No Way Home was pretty fun, but sir, that is my flavor of the week for you.
Sounds good, man. That's one that I have to get to. I haven't seen the last. I think just the last one of the new Spider-Man movies, so I'll have to check it out. But that does wrap up this week's episode
Yes,
for
sir.
all the ladies and gentlemen. As always, we really appreciate you taking the time to listen with us. You can find us on Google Podcasts, check us out on Spotify, check us out on YouTube, Twitter, at Tall and Short of One on Twitter, the number one. But yeah, thank you all for joining us for another episode.
Tell your friends. New episodes drop every Thursday. Give us a like if you enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button. It really helps. We just thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you spending your time with us and just joining the conversation here every week. So thank you so much. This has been another episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast. Peace out, everyone.
See you next time.